All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of YouTube. This is Pastor Dow. You know, it's time, it really truly is time for me to talk about this subject because I'm sure that it's going to stimulate the thought with others while it will upset others, because a lot of times when we have to look at a reflection, especially if it's of ourselves, the reflection is too painful for many of us to deal with simply because we are right in our own eyes and we refuse change. The hypocrisy of people growing up in life is just utterly amazing to me. It's astounding. You know, as I begin to think on this particular subject that I'm going to speak about here this morning, it makes me wonder if people really truly understand what their word means, what a vow is, and do we ever really truly take it seriously? Is it always based on conditions? Because, you know, when you look at the regular secular marriage situation, you know, the vow, sickness and health until death do you part. All right. And also better or for worse. Now, people have, you know, different things that they believe concerning what is better or for worse. But when you really truly watch the integrity of people's heart, you find out that people basically are hypocritical liars. And whenever they get married to someone, it's not for sickness or in health. It's not if you're rich or you're poor. It's not for better or for worse. It's based on what you can do for me. And if you some way, somehow become oppressive to me, and if you can't fulfill all my lust and dreams, then we're just going to cut this relationship off and go off to somewhere else. That's why the European platform of marriage, it has never worked, never really worked. And if you've been conditioned after that, what's the difference? You know, I know a lot of people want to jump on the Mormons because they have 3, 4, 5 wives. But then you look at the way that the Western civilizations practice marriage and stuff. I mean, if somebody burned oatmeal, you get married, you get divorced from them. If somebody jumps religions, you get divorced from them. Somebody say something you don't like, and you call it irreconcilable differences, you get divorced. And some of us have been married 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And I'm not saying that there are not conditions in marriage where people should not separate. As a matter of fact, there are conditions that people should separate. But a lot of things that you people are separating or want to use the out for, and somehow you believe that especially if you get your eyes on somebody else, that the grass is greener on the other side, you're sadly mistaken, because that grass needs to be mowed just like the grass did on this side. And so the truth is, if we really truly reflect and look at ourselves, the problem is not the person that we're married to, even though they may have their issues, and I'm sure that they do. But the real issue, the real trouble, and the real problem is me. And that is the truth. As a pastor, you know, I deal with marriage couples, and some people just refuse to even come to the table simply because they want to hold their position or their will, and they don't want any intrusion of truth upon their conscience or their life, because they're just going to do what they're going to do and be the way they are. You know, it's amazing to me. I cannot understand why, if you have a male or female, listen to me very closely, a husband or wife, I want you to listen to me. Would not someone want a husband or a wife that does not commit adultery, they do not fornicate, they do not lie, they do not cheat, they do not steal, they do not slander you, they do not physically or verbally abuse you? Who would not want that in a relationship? Many of us know prior to conversion that many of us were fornicators, whoremongers, whores, liars, cheaters, stealers. And of course, it was the pain that everybody else caused us that caused our problems in our life. Because if you really truly look at it, I do this test all the time. Can you write me a list of all the wrongs that everybody has ever done to you? And of course, man, that list is wild, it's big, it's huge. It's the front page, the back page, 3 or 4 other pages. Now I want you to write a list of all the people you have done wrong. And I sit and watch the struggle. I sit and watch the fight. of people even trying to come up with one thing that they've done wrong to somebody else. Do you understand? Because we ourselves are the most difficult person that there ever is to see. We don't like to come to the grips on the knowledge of the truth that we've got flaws. We've got issues. We have sins. We have a lot of things that we need to work out for ourselves, but we finger and put the finger towards someone else so much. And of course, this alleviates us from our own personal judgment. And then later on, after people continue to keep making many suggestions about what you need to do, they end up getting frustrated. They start feeling betrayal. They start feeling lonely, and they can't take it no more. Next thing you know, here comes Playboy Brad, or here come Playgirl Jane, and they start talking to your husband or your wife, and they start gathering their attention, and everybody's expressing their feelings and emotions, and we're starting to develop an emotional soul tie. Next thing you know, we start to see our spouse in a different light. We don't even want them no more, and then we're not interested, and then off and run to the divorce court we go. And it's just a shame. But I have watched people in marriages tolerate each other 10, 15, 20, listen to this, 30, listen to this one, 40 something years. The wife could have went out and had some type of infidelity against the husband, or the husband could have had some type of infidelity against the wife. It's irrelevant. It makes no difference whether it be husband or wife, but I want you to listen to me real close. I've known people that have been married 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and have literally put up with their spouse's crap for all those years. I mean, literally put up with it, and have quietly suffered. They may have harbored bitterness in their heart against it, but yet and still they stayed. They put up with the drunkenness. They put up with the cheating. They put up with the abuse. They put up with the lack of integrity. They put up with the laziness and the apathy. They put up with all these things. It's just utterly amazing how much oppression that we ourselves can endure without the influence of the Father in our life. It's utterly amazing. But then I watch something change. I watch the father get a hold of a husband or a wife, and they start to understand. Their understanding is open, and then they start to understand this Bible. They start to realize that they are wicked, they are sinners, they are low down, they are without Yah, and they're on their way to a living, burning hell. And it's not the living, burning hell that actually causes them to change. It's them coming to the realization that they have spurned the love of the Father all of their lives, and they realize that the creator of the universe, the eternal, really truly is interested in them and love them. So they start to change. They stop clubbing. They stop fornicating. They stop whoremongering. The women stop fornicating, stop committing adultery. They stop going out and getting the husbands and the family into an extraordinary amount of debt simply because they cannot control their vanity. They start to change because they repent, and they start keeping the commandments. Their lifestyle is changing, their dress is changing, their attitude is changing, their character is changing. Not for the worst, because they were already in the worst, but for the best. Wow. And then something crazy happens. The people who endured you for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, all of a sudden, now you have got the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. We can't take this anymore. Now, I could put up with you when you were committing adultery on me. I could put up with you when you were beating the hell out of me and abusing me. I could put up with your verbal abuse, your mental abuse. I could put up with all that. I could put up with your drinking. I could put up with your late night running around with the boys and running around with the girls, and then come in. I could put up with you not keeping the house, not keeping the children clean. I could put up with you not going to work and being a provider or being lazy. I could even put up with you getting fat as boss hog. I could tolerate all that. But boy, I tell you what, excuse me, when you pick that Bible up, even though we've been to church all of our life, and even though at times we would even seek the Bible for comfort, but boy, I tell you, when you start picking up that Bible, when you start living, no more professing with your mouth, but when you start living what that book said, that's it. I cannot tolerate that. You have got to get out of my life, because this world is not big enough for both of us. Can you imagine that bizarre behavior when you have someone that's come to the realization of themselves and they change? Can you imagine a husband that stops fornicating, stops committing adultery, stops abusing, stops drinking? Can you imagine that? And he starts taking care of his responsibility. He wants to change his life, and his life is getting better. And he starts telling his wife the reason why his life is getting better, and she says, I don't want to hear that. I do not. You see how powerful the conditioning of religion is in a person's life? Think about this. A wife that stops secretly committing adultery on her husband. She stops running up the credit cards and getting them in debt. She stops all her hollering, fussing, complaining, fighting, and screaming. She starts, can you imagine it? Can you imagine that all of a sudden she comes to the realization that she is big as a rhino and she needs to lose weight because she understands that her husband's eyes are not going to be desirous towards her the way that he used to be, simply because she is showing that she don't care about herself. And she starts to change. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? That people repent, they start to change, and now your spouse despises you simply because you want to do things right. Can you imagine that? I mean, look at the devil. The devil is a liar. If you're a wife, if your husband decides to move to Timbuktu, you're supposed to go. Simply because of your vow and your commitment to him. Husband, you are supposed to provide for your wife. And no matter what, that's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to take care of your family. And I've sat and watched people endure a lot of things. And I said, watch people jump from, hey, the family, even a natural family doesn't say anything if you jump from Christianity and you go be a Mormon, or if you choose to be a Buddhist, or if you choose to be a Jew, or if you choose to be, what else? Another one. Any other flavor of Christianity, a Jehovah's Witness, anything other than that. Hey, if you choose to be something other than the way that you were raised, people can tolerate that. You know what the line is drawn at? When you start keeping these commandments and you start living what that Bible says, all of a sudden people cannot take it anymore. Now, mind you, they see that your life is getting better. Now, I understand, male, female, that you don't have all the wisdom. You're into this thing. You're trying. And you would love nothing more than your spouse to understand what's going on. And that's the reason why that we all go to our family first once we get this. First place we go is straight to our family and say, here, I want you to read this. I want you to listen to this. And they can see the changes in your life. They can see that. But they're still holding this bitterness that's deep down in them. And they actually resent the fact that you're going on to perfection and you're changing. They resent that fact. They hate that fact. They can't stand that fact. Because now your righteousness is reflecting upon their corrupt lives. And they can't take it. Because now in their eyes, they're saying in their mind that, and they're thinking that you are self-righteous when nothing could be further from the truth. You get it. There was a time you didn't get it. But now you've got it. You've got it, and you've got it big time. So now the words of Christ The reflection of them are actually coming to pass right before our very eyes. You know, most people are sacrilegious against what they call the Old Testament. They don't want to hear it. But let's listen to the words of Jesus himself. He said in Matthew 10:34, listen to what he says. He says, think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. Listen to that. Now, we know a sword, and the Bible often talks about and refers to a two-edged sword. And that means it cuts on both sides. It cuts going in and it cuts going out. Look what he says. So he didn't come to send peace, but he come to send a sword. And the sword is used to cut and divide. Listen to what it says. For I am to come to set a man at variance. That means against or opposed his father. And a daughter against her mother. And her daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's own foes shall be they of his own household. These words begin to jump off the pages as we watch this spiritual war starts taking place. The people who endured and had the type of presence to where they could endure all these hardships that we placed upon each other throughout our lives without the Father. Now all of a sudden we're seeking change and we understand this and we're cleaning up our lives, and now the people who said that they loved us for better or for worse, for sickness and in health, for rich or for poor, now all of a sudden they hate us, they despise us, they can't stand us. My question is, now who is the one that has the wicked heart and their integrity doesn't mean anything? Good question, isn't it? But Jesus clearly told the people that he come to set at variance a son against his father, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a daughter against her mother-in-law, and a man's own foes will be they of his own household. All of a sudden, we start to realize there's something more powerful going on. How is it that we could endure all this sin, all this oppression, all this depression, and all this obsession that we have endured all these many years with this spouse? Now all of a sudden they become a despised and hated person simply because they started reading this Bible and chose to change their life. I'm going to tell you the difference is light has come into the world. And men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. That means that while people were hiding under a cloak of self-righteousness, their heart is still evil and their heart is still wicked. So therefore, they're not going to view you from the perspective of repentance and perfection because they don't see you that way. They still see you and view you from their dark heart. The Messiah didn't deceive anybody and told us that the first place the war is going to start is within your own home. So now we're watching families ripped apart and tear apart simply because somebody chooses to follow the scriptures and they realize they're not Christians, because you can read all the Old Testament, you can read all the Gospels, and you can probably read, look at this, 3/4 of the New Testament and never see that word Christian ever mentioned. There was never, ever. Jesus was not familiar with the religion of Christianity. He didn't know it. The apostles didn't know it. You're dealing with translation where people insert the word because the Bible only talks about Israel. And it's not the Israel that you're thinking that this world has conditioned you about. It's talking about Israel who have been in slaveries, captivities, and they're scattered throughout all the earth. And these injustices has been perpetuated against these people for a very long time. Now all of a sudden you become a Hebrew Israelite. And you're understanding your Hebraic roots. And you're following his scriptures. And now you're the most hated and despised man or woman, not only by your husband or your wife, but by your children and by your family. You get thrown in jail. They could come bail you out. They would have all they ate. As long as you're sitting next to them in pagan Christianity where you're setting up Christmas trees and worshiping the sun on Sunday and rabbit laying eggs on Easter, they fine and good. But as soon as you start keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments, they're done with you. It's amazing. And they cannot lay any sin from the time of your conversion up until this point now to your charge. Sure, they could point out character flaws because you're being perfected. You may not do things right. You may get upset. You may scream. You may holler. You may shout. You may do many things. But far as sin, you're no longer practicing that. You're not living in that life any longer. So Jesus goes on to say in Matthew 10:37, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? And he that taketh not up his cross, see, that's another translation, and followeth after me is not worthy of me. So you find out a lot of people that once they find the real true Messiah, and if it takes losing father, mother, wife, husband, sons, or daughters, makes no difference. If so be it, if it takes that, so be it. Because the die has been cast long time ago. My decision has really been made. So I speak to a lot of the people out there that are hurting, who love their spouse, who love their children, and yet their family don't get it. I speak to your hurt and your pain to let you know that the Father, when he says, you know, when the Messiah says, I will never leave you nor forsake you, and you're never left, you're never forsaken. My personal suggestion is you stick with him. You're going to find out that a lot of people are not who they think that they are. Jeremiah spoke to us in Jeremiah 3:14. It says, turn, O backsliding children, say of Yahweh, for I am married unto you. And listen to what he says. Key words right here, prophesying. And I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and will bring you to Zion. It is amazing how much hypocrisy that is in the people who expect more righteousness out of you than they are capable of producing themselves. Is it not remarkable and amazing? Israelite, I will continue to tell you to keep driving on and run this race with patience. I hope that I've said something to stimulate thought. And I hope that many of you are reconsidered the separation that the enemy is trying to deceive each and every last one of you in, and that you would really, truly, and honestly meditate upon the words that I said, do an inward reflection and look at this thing and see now if your husband or your wife, are they getting better or are they getting worse? When they were in a worse condition, you could put up with them. Now they're getting better. Now you hate them. Now you can't change. I think something is wrong with your heart, and you need to really, truly look at yourself in the mirror. And that's the truth. And that is the truth straightway. Oh yeah, one more thing before I go. What ultimately is going to happen after conversion, no matter what you count as loss or no matter what loss come to you, ultimately what's going to happen is that your footprint and footsteps are going to lead you to people who are on the same path. And that husband is separated from you, that wife is separated from you, and if they don't get it, you know what's going to happen? Later on down the line, as your relationship grows to the Father, he's going to send you a faithful husband that will not commit adultery on you. A Hebrew Israelite husband who keeps the commandments, who will cover you spiritually. And you will love him and he will love you. He'll send you a wife that will be humble, who will love you and take care of the children and guide the house. Everything that you ever wanted from your previous husband and wife that you couldn't get because they refused to change, the Most High has somebody for you. I know there's a lot of people out there that have different doctrines. I could care less about the doctrines. I just stick with what the book says. But I've watched many Israelites suffer separation only to end up finding contentment, peace, and joy later on with somebody else who loves the Father just like they do.